Hi, I'm Salvation, and in this series of videos I want to talk about loot in Path of Exile. To be more precise, I want to talk about what roles you want on what items to make them valuable for sale or use. Let's first talk about some general rules that apply to all kinds of loot. Every piece of gear in Path of Exile needs a combination of good rolls to be valuable. There is not a single good roll that makes an item very good. You always need a combination of rolls to make an item stand out and sell for much or be of much value in your build. You also need the right base for the right rolls, and this is what this series is about, telling you what bases are good with what rolls, so you know if you found something valuable. In the first part of the series I want to talk about daggers. Daggers are really popular and can be used by casters as well as attackers, and are also very popular choices for both attackers and casters at the moment. The base types are also very clear cut and distinct in that some of them are good for casters and some of them are good for attackers. So it's very easy to identify what item you want for which role. As with all weapons, there are kind of families running through the levels. I will mostly talk about the name of the highest one in each family, but you can identify them easily because they have the same 2D and 3D art, so it shouldn't be hard to find out what the lower bases are. For daggers we have the fast base, that is the ambusher family. Then we have the middle ground base, that is the Skeen family, with the highest being the royal Skeen. Then we have the caster daggers, that is the Chris family, which the highest one is the platinum Chris. And then we have the slow hard hitting daggers, which the highest one is the demon dagger. The latest addition to the dagger family is the Zai, which has a different implicit than all other daggers, with giving you block chance instead of global critical strike chance. So this is a pretty special case, and I will talk about uses for that one later. Let's first look at all the daggers. They differ by implicit, from 40% increased global critical strike chance up to 80% critical strike chance, and then there's the middle ground with 60% global critical strike chance on the demon daggers. The first thought might be that the 80% global critical strike chance daggers are always better, because hey, it's double the critical strike chance that other daggers give you. But the high critical strike chance daggers are also very slow. They have 1.2 attacks per second, and that is a no-go for most attack builds. So these daggers with 1.2 base attacks are mostly used as caster daggers, and that is what you want to roll on them. You want spell damage, you want critical strike multiplier, you want critical strike chance for spells. Apart from that, the Chris family can also be used in flicker strike builds, because they have a pretty high base damage and a really high local critical strike chance, so that might come in handy. But a flicker strike build that wants a really hard hitting dagger would actually prefer demon dagger, because it has a higher base damage, but it's not all that much of a difference compared to a platinum Chris, so there's a choice in that. Also, the demon daggers are not much of a difference when it comes to caster mods. It's 20% less global critical strike chance than the Chris family, but it's overall not that much in the big picture. If you have good caster rolls on a Chris or on a demon dagger, it will sell. That said, for caster daggers, the base does not really matter. It does not matter if you have a platinum Chris or if you have a copper Chris. The caster rolls don't care about the base damage or any stats on the weapon apart from the implicit, so yeah, Copper Chris can be exactly as good as a Platinum Chris when it comes to use as caster weapon. So, as I said, on a caster dagger you want spell damage, you want critical strike chance for spells, you want global critical strike multiplier, and maybe also flat damage added to spells. Maybe you noticed that I did not mention cast speed, because that is one thing that daggers can't roll normally. But now in Essence League you can use Essence to force cast speed on any weapon. So now daggers can also have cast speed, and a cast speed dagger with good rolls will be worth for small fortune. They are really good for most crit caster builds, and yeah, they can only be crafted by Essence. They cannot be found in normal drops. You need to use high level Essence to get the cast speed on the dagger. All that said, for a caster dagger it's not a big deal what base it is on, because only the implicit counts, but if you can choose the base, as in crafting it with essences, you will use 80% crit base instead of an ambusher, because yeah, an ambusher has no advantage whatsoever, and a Chris at least has a high crit chance going for it. But if you happen to find an like ambusher in the wild on the ground that has really good caster rolls, it will still sell and will be worth a lot, because as I said, the base does not matter all that much for a caster. So what about the Zai? That's the strange base with the block chance instead of the global critical strike chance. That is a bit of a strange base, because mostly there are crit casters that want to use daggers, but daggers can use whirling blades. That's a big advantage they have over all other caster weapons, and that might be a reason why a non-crit caster wants to use a dagger. And as a non-crit caster you don't care at all about the implicit of normal daggers, so you might want to grab a Zai to get the sweet 6% chance to block. And that is actually a really good idea, and these daggers are certainly the best ones for casters that don't care about critical strike chance, because maybe they are incinerate or just don't invest much into critical strike chance, and they can use those daggers, get a little advantage from the implicit of the dagger, and still have the ability to use whirling blades for fast movement. When we are looking at rares and try to figure out what they are worth and how good they are, we also need to have a look at uniques, because uniques always have like static rolls. They are roll in a pretty narrow range most of the time, and so we can compare our rares to the uniques that are available to find out how valuable they are. For caster daggers there is a Divinarius. That one has 50 to 70% increased spell damage, and an implicit of 40% global critical strike chance, and an explicit mod of 80 to 100% increased critical strike chance for spells, bringing it to a total of 120 to 140 increased critical strike chance for spells. For caster daggers that is a pretty solid base, I'd say. Of course it does not have critical strike multiplier, so that is one thing that a rare dagger can bring into the race to be the better dagger. And of course a rare dagger can also roll a higher cast speed and flat damage added to spells that might be valuable to spells that have a high damage efficiency. You can also get, if you use a Chris, you can get a higher increased critical strike chance for spells because of the 40% more in the implicit, and the highest roll on rares is 107%. You can also get a local increased attack speed roll on your rare dagger, and that makes Whirling Blades faster. Whirling Blades does not care all that much, or not at all, about the base attack speed of a dagger. It only cares about the local increased attack speed mod on the dagger. So 1.2 attack speed dagger with, let's say, 15% increased attack speed will be exactly as fast for Whirling Blades as a 1.5 attack speed dagger base with the same 15% attack speed mod. So a Divinarius isn't all that fast for Whirling Blades, so that could be something that a Rare Dagger can have to be better than a Divinarius. Divinarius has the unique mod of 10% increased radius of area skills, and if a build cares much about that, that is a pretty strong argument for a Divinarius. But a Rare Dagger can roll lots higher spell damage, the same increased critical strike chance for spells or even higher, and can also have critical strike multiplier, which is a big damage boost for all crit spellcasters that invest much into critical strike chance, and it's also a stat that's not that easy to get. The only slots where you can get critical strike multiplier as a one-hand spellcaster is your weapon and your amulet slot, at least as far as rare rolls go. You can also craft critical strike multiplier on rings in the Essence League, but yeah, they are pretty special because can only be crafted with high level essences, and there are of course uniques like Face Breakers that can give you a lot of critical strike multiplier but don't provide much of other stats. So yeah, getting critical strike multiplier on your weapon might be a good idea. So what is your dagger worth? To tell you that, it's you can't just make a general statement like your dagger is worth 2 exalts. You always need to compare it to other daggers on the market, and as a first rough draft to get an idea of the price, you should check how your dagger compares to a Divinarius, and then see what your dagger does better or does worse, and from that you can figure out a price. There's also another unique caster dagger, that is the Consuming Dark. This one is pretty special, and I would not recommend comparing a rare dagger to that, because the builds that use Consuming Dark I'm not at all interested in using a rare dagger at all, because you use it for the poison and for the conversion, and or at least for one of the two. And if a rare dagger simply can't provide any of that, and if build uses a Consuming Dark, it will not have interest in using a rare dagger at all. And on the other hand, a build that does not profit from the things that a Consuming Dark provides, as in chaos damage poisons enemies and converts fire damage to chaos damage, would not want to use a Consuming Dark at all, and it's not hard to find a rare dagger that is better if you don't use the unique mods on the Consuming Dark. So I think that Divinarius should be a good benchmark to compare to, because that's a pretty general caster dagger that has the unique benefit of increased area of effect, but it's not that much of a big deal that rare dagger could not compete. In the next episode of this series I will talk about attack daggers, and there are two distinct categories there, that is elemental attack daggers and physical attack daggers, and I will talk about them both and explain what mods are important on them and what uniques they need to compare to. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and watch out for the next parts. I will also talk about all other bases, or at least the interesting bases that are available, where you might need to know some things about the roles that can be good and make an item valuable. Thanks for watching.